Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Wallner. Welcome to the Cloud Native Data Management Day sessions. I'm a manager here in the Cloud Native Business Unit at Pure, where we do work with all things Portworx and Kubernetes. And I'm joined here by Bhavin. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Bhavin Shah. I'm a technical marketing manager working with Ryan inside the same cloud native business unit at Pure Storage.
Great, Bob. And so today we're going to be talking about data services as a service on Kubernetes. I know that's a lot of services in one sentence, but really what we're going to be discussing is databases as a service. So database is a type of data service, although we will kind of talk about data services generally. So that's a good place to start, is what is a data service? So our definition that we'll be using today is really characterized by the word stateful. And really this to us means that it persists data. Usually to non-volatile storage, somewhere that the process or compute can actually lose power and data remains. So in this case, right, that's what we call a stateful service. That's a term sort of used in the Kubernetes ecosystem quite often. A data service really is a overarching term for a stateful service. And if you dive a little deeper, a database. Often data services manage, store, and analyze or structure data. Now, data services may do one or a few of these things, all of these things. It really depends on the type of service, whether you're talking about sort of a data lake or component or a message queue or a typical, SQL database or even a NoSQL database. The other character that we like to talk about is it allows access to this data, usually by some sort of client application or connection. So you think about how data services are used. Often they're connected to either use that analyzed data, store more data, or read data from that location. So again, this includes everything from document databases, key value stores, typical column-oriented databases, and more. What is database as a service? So data services as a service. I took this little quote here from Stratascale. I really liked it in the sense that, software, it enables you to do many things, right? So it enables you to set up and operate and scale databases in a common set of abstractions. So really this way of dictating what a database as a service is really hones in on the simplicity of what database as a service is really after, right? It's those abstractions and how those abstractions are implemented for the end user to make it really easy to set up, operate, and scale that data service. So just wanted to point this out as a way for us to conceptualize database as a service as we talk through it. Some example data services that we're probably more familiar with in the Kubernetes ecosystem, and definitely within Pure here, is things like MongoDB, Cassandra, Kafka, MySQL, Elasticsearch. All of these fit into our definition of what a data service is. Many of them are databases. Some of them are message queues. Some of them are CI tools, Jenkins, for instance. But I would categorize it as a data service because, Jenkins does have a large component of data that it needs to hold on to and persist. Maybe it's not the typical definition or doesn't meet, every component of what a database does, but that's okay, right? Data services are really just stateful by nature, by character. Production-ready data services. They are hard, right? That is something that we all understand, right? If you're familiar with Kubernetes and containers, we all know that containers were used often for ephemeral, very stateless applications for the majority of its history before we really are at the point we are at today, putting more stateful things inside of Kubernetes or on Kubernetes. And the reason that's happened is because, well, organizations are starting to get used to a new technology. They're starting with security and automation and stateless components like web servers and things they can scale out and use the Kubernetes ecosystems for. And it wasn't really until Kubernetes started maturing with stateful sets and operators and there's different products out there that allow you to store and connect storage systems. So it's definitely a hard thing to do, and that's why something like data services as a service can be really important. So what does production ready actually mean? What do you need? Well, there's lots of components to production ready, and maybe the definition of production ready means something different in your organization to someone else's. It's automation APIs. It's having the ability to auto scale. It's making sure that data service is portable across maybe one or more Kubernetes applications. It's automating your day one administrative tasks. It's automating day two tasks like growing and scaling. It's really targeting the right performance aspects of that database and best practices. It's providing a way to evolve your schema within a data service. It's managing client certificates and audit and quotas and volume encryption. So there's I didn't read them all, and that's on purpose because there's lots of them, right? Getting production ready may mean every single one of these bullet points, or it may mean a majority of these bullet points. The point is, standing up a production ready data services takes a lot of work. And if you are an organization that has more than one data service, more than one database that your organization or different DevOps teams or different application teams need, you may need to do this for every single one of them or have those abstractions. And that's where it's important to understand what tools are out there. Today, we're going to be talking about Portworx data services. This is a brand new service offering from Pure and Portworx, which simplifies managing data services on Kubernetes. All those things we just talked about in terms of deploying and best practices and managing disaster recovery or data protection or encryption, all those things are managed for a production ready capability just with a few clicks of a button. So the other idea here is that it doesn't limit you to doing all these things for a single data service, right? It supports a catalog of data services and really supports that broad range of capabilities for various data services on Kubernetes. And most importantly, it provides a consistent experience, no matter what infrastructure, where your Kubernetes cluster is running, meaning that Portworx Enterprise is layered as that abstraction, that key abstraction that's so important when providing a consistent operational experience across your cloud or on-prem or hybrid cloud environments. So data service catalog, right? Those data services we talked about earlier, what does PDS actually bring to the table, right? The examples on the left here, Cassandra, Couchbase, Elasticsearch, Kafka, Mongo, Postgres, these are all ones we talked about earlier. And PDS actually provides these as a catalog for the end user, meaning that if your organization needs to deploy something like Postgres or Cassandra or Elasticsearch, or maybe all three, or maybe a couple, it can go to this catalog and just simply choose and know they're getting the best practices for running a stateful service like Elasticsearch or Kafka or Cassandra on Kubernetes in their Kubernetes environment, but with the knowledge and support of everything that Portworx has done to date. The other benefit here is, as we talk about data services as a service, you can bring your own Kubernetes, right? So you get the database as a service sort of component to your own Kubernetes cluster. So you can run this with EKS, GKE, on hybrid cloud deployments like Anthos or Outposts, and even on-prem with things like OpenShift and Rancher. This is really important because it's sort of bringing the database as a service to you, and you still own that infrastructure with the data services provided by Portworx Data Services, or PDS. Again, that common building block that's so important is the Portworx Enterprise component that gets layered as the abstraction wherever you are in the cloud, or on-prem, or in a hybrid environment. And again, this provides everything that Portworx has done so far in the Kubernetes ecosystem, like provide encryption, disaster recovery, high availability, data security, and much more for the individual stateful volumes or groups of stateful volumes that are so often configured and run with data services like Cassandra and Elasticsearch. Now, the full picture here is that no matter where you're running, you can go and choose this data service from the catalog, easily deploy it to your Kubernetes cluster, and you have a variety of data services running in a production-ready way on top of any Kubernetes cluster on any infrastructure with PDS and Portworx. So now we're going to actually demo the application, and I'm going to hand over the ball to Bhavin. Bhavin, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Ryan. That was a great overview of data services as a service. So now let's see it in action. Again, as Ryan mentioned, this is like a brand new service. It's still as part of an early access program. So whatever you're looking at today is not generally available, but will be really soon. So talking about PDS or Portworx Data Service, it is a SaaS-based offering that allows operators or developers to deploy different data services on your target Kubernetes cluster. So we'll go through, as part of this demo, we'll go through such a deployment and then look at what are the different resources that are created and how you can protect your applications or data services that are deployed using PDS. So to just look at or just start a database deployment, we can navigate to the PDS UI and hit create. Here, you can see all the different data services or databases that are listed in the PDS catalog that Ryan highlighted. For this demo, we'll just deploy a simple Cassandra instance. We can select from all the different versions that are available in the PDS catalog. So again, we'll select 3.11.9 as the version for the demo today. From a target cluster perspective, we are deploying it in our dev environment, which has one cluster with a dev namespace created on it. As a developer, I can create the number of nodes I want in my Cassandra cluster. By default, it defaults to 3. You can increase it as needed. And then you can just give your Cassandra database instance a name. So it will just create a new cluster called Cas demo, auto-generate a name for you. You can select from different templates. Right now, we'll select the small template, which means that each Cassandra pod will have 1 CPU, 2 gigs of memory, and then a 1 gig disk size. You can change these parameters as needed or leave it as default. And then you can basically go ahead and create your database. So this is how easy it is to deploy a database instance. And again, if you don't know the specifics of how you get it done, if you wanted to do this manually, you had to not just configure your Portworx storage class and configure the different parameters, the IO profiles and the replication level that are best suited for your Cassandra database. But you also needed to figure out whether you want to deploy deploy Cassandra using a deployment object or using the Cassandra operator, and then configure the best practices in terms of topology awareness and how it should work at the IO level. So as you can see, this is a live demo. So it quickly went ahead and pushed or created a new Cassandra database instance on your target cluster. So if we click on view resource, you can see that get additional details like, okay, when was it created? How many, like what's the image version that it used? How many nodes are part of the cluster? What's the version? What's the environment? Storage provider is obviously Portworx. What's the status? Like, is it healthy? Is it going through upgrade? You can monitor your resource from this single user interface. And you can, as a developer, the thing that you usually care about are the connection details. Like, you don't really care about how the data service or database is actually deployed and running. You just want how details around how you can connect to the database instance from your application. So this resource page also gives you how you can access the Cassandra instance. So we just give you a connection string that you can leverage and use it as part of your application code. So this is how easy it is to deploy an application or a data service using PDS. But now let's say I've deployed it, day zero looks great, but now I have some data that's stored in the database instance, which I need to protect. PDS also allows you to create backup jobs for your database instance. So you can select a schedule, you can create a scheduled backup job. So like every day or every week, it will basically create a new snapshot, store it locally or on a remote S3 repo, or you can create an ad hoc one, like you want to capture this point in time. You can select whether you want a full snapshot or you just want an incremental based on your previous backup job. Since this is like the first backup job that we are creating, we'll select snapshot and then we'll hit create backup. So I can again click on follow task and look at all the different tasks that are being executed to protect my application. So it goes through and basically takes a snapshot of your application, stores it in a persistent volume, and then backs up that persistent volume. So you have an application consistent snapshot of your Cassandra database. I can do a view resource again and get additional details for my backup snapshot. So I can see where it's actually being stored. So our target cluster was in the US West 2 region. It created a new S3 backup, S3 bucket and stored my backup there. If you want to use PDS for additional applications as part of the early access program, you can use it to deploy Cassandra or Kafka or RabbitMQ, Redis, and Zookeeper. And as you can see, we have more services coming down the line as we get closer and closer to GA. But that's a quick demo of how you can leverage a database as a service platform that's built for the cloud native and the Kubernetes world, and how you can deploy these distributed data services using all the best practices and curated images from Portworx. That's it for this demo. Let me pass it back to Ryan and we can wrap this session up.
Thank you very much, Bhavin. And I'm just going to drop in back to our slides here. And that's it, really. So appreciate it. And until next time, thank you and take care.